This is Wilson Morales from Black Women TV talking to Nicole London regarding American Masters, the disappearance of Miss Scott. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. It's Black History Month. We've got this story coming out. I don't think a lot of people know about Hazel Scott. What led you to take on this project?
I was actually approached to take on this project by Fourth Act Factual, um, and American Masters, and it, it was a no-brainer for me. I mean, the story of Hazel Scott, I very vaguely knew of her before. I knew that she had been married to Adam Clayton Powell, and I knew that she played two pianos in this black and white clip. So for me, it was really a gift to be able to dive into her story, dive into her life, and unpack what an extraordinary woman she was, what an extraordinary artist, and an activist as well.
There's a lot of footage to be found here that's from what we gathered and we saw. Was it a challenge getting the footage or was it out there already publicly?
Well, she did five Hollywood films, so those were out there publicly. One of them was a little harder to find. The real challenge was finding, and she saved a lot of stuff. She saved a lot of pictures, but it was a challenge to find a lot of the footage because she's not been as well known. It didn't necessarily ping right away. Sometimes I had to search for Adam Clayton Powell and then find Hazel in the background. But it was surprising how much I was able to uncover. Some things had already been saved at the Library of Congress, but like my best, I suppose, and archivally, some of the best things I found were in Europe. French archives had incredible, with rich depth of Hazel Scott. Some of the films that she performed in France. They did a lot of reportage on her living at home. So that's some of that footage is in the film, her apartment in France, living and working in France. So that was really gratifying to find. But the gem of the archive that I did find was uncovering the images of her wedding, which was covered in Life magazine, but I didn't know that there was footage to go along with that. So to see, the car pull up at Cafe Society, and the couple with the cake, and gazing into each other's eyes, that was really precious to find.
Did you contact the Powell family in terms of letting them know you're doing the story and then what can they offer?
So Adam Clayton Powell III, their son, was involved from the very beginning. So he was incredibly generous with letting us, unpack things that he had saved, the things that she had saved. So he was wonderful to like kind of work with and really, and the stories. He had so many wonderful stories of him and his mother living in France. Just, such incredible recall of the life that he was living as a son of two incredibly powerful and charismatic people.
When people look at this, people always wonder, are we getting a film that we saw, we can read on Wikipedia, or are we getting, or are we getting something different? Because people like to think like, obviously when I saw the name, the first thing I did was Wikipedia and to say like, oh, is she going step by step, or we're getting something new that we have not heard or learned before?
Showing a little more nuanced than just what you can learn the bullet points of a life. One of the things I wanted to highlight in the film was the friendships between Black females, especially in Hollywood or in entertainment, the way that they, uplift each other and support one another in different ways. That's something that you wouldn't necessarily find on a Wikipedia page. What it felt to be in a relationship with a figure, a charismatic and dashing and controversial figure like Adam Clayton Powell. Those kind of things, those notes, I don't know if they would convey the same way on a Wikipedia page. And also the what it feels like to be an activist, someone that stands alone most of the time in a fight against injustice. She was a solo performer oftentimes. So it's like when it would be her on the road, it would be her on the road standing against segregation, for instance, where she refused to play shows that were segregated. So these are things I don't know if you can capture, and I hope audiences will get that feeling that you can't get from a Wikipedia page.
You've got Shirley Ralph narrating at some point as Hazel's voice. What went into that concept?
Well, I'm a Guyanese descendant myself. One of the editors for the film was Trinidadian. Hazel herself is born and raised until four in Trinidad. So, it's just a connection that I thought would be wonderful if there was a Hollywood actress, someone of immense talent who was Caribbean descended that could really help lend voice and energy, and some gravitas to this story. And of course, Cheryl Lee Ralph was the first person that I thought of. And I was like, oh no, it's just a small little film. She won't do it. But when we had reached out to her, turns out she'd been a lifelong fan of Hazel Scott. So and was so enthusiastic to lend her voice to this project. So we're excited for people to see that work and to see her interpretation of Hazel Scott.
When you do it, when anyone does a documentary of someone in the past, there's a lot of footage to be seen, and then you need to balance that out with people speaking, and the way you have Shirley Ralph and others talk about her. What was the thought process when you were putting this together, as far as what was going to be more important, seeing her perform, the footage, or people speaking about her? Like, how did you want to frame this?
Uh, I wanted to frame this as something, that people could really get to know Hazel. I didn't want it to be such a rote, travel log through her life. I wanted people to really get inside her story, and understand how and why a figure like her, who was so famous at her height, could be so forgotten now that, we don't know her at all. She's not in the history books. When we think of the first Black person to have a TV show, we think of Nat King Cole, we don't think of Hazel Scott. And so that was really the driving force behind this, is to like make sure that they remember. Once they've seen it, you're never going to forget that you have been introduced to Hazel Scott and want to know more.
Now this is not your first rodeo doing these type of documentaries. Obviously, you were nominated for American Masters, The Birth of Cool, Miles Davis. Um, what did you learn from doing that helped you out here on this process, skill set wise?
I'd always done a lot of archival projects, so that Miles Davis was a massive undertaking in terms of um, having done so many arts documentaries as well. Miles Davis, the music was so much. There was a lot of music in that film, a lot of photos in that film. It was pretty overwhelming. Also, a previous project that I worked on, Black Panthers, that also had a lot of archival materials. So I've done a lot of archival research, as a documentarian. So that's the first thing that I brought in. Each film, you kind of hone your skills to that end, so that, when I came to Hazel, it was much easier to kind of navigate through where to find, archival materials, where to, and what looks better than others, what things can help convey the story a little better than others. So it was really great. And our editor, there were, was the editors were really great in kind of making that translate on screen.
I just thought about this, being that it's about music. Usually, the tough thing about doing whether it's a biopic or a documentary about a musician, it's the rights to air the music, even if somebody's playing. Was that because you had Adam Clayton Jr., or the third actually, involved? Did he help facilitate in airing, even though these are movies and these are performances, getting the rights to air that?
Really, I mean, these are those kind of things are so they're their own world. Oftentimes, artists don't own their music. It's usually a label. So it's like we had an archival researcher and a music, supervisor to kind of help with that on that end. But he was really helpful and, point us in directions, mostly where to, people that she knew in her life that we could talk to.
Hmm. It's Black History Month. Obviously, we're going to hear her story, through your work. What do you want people to get once the movie's over, like to appreciate Hazel more than what they knew of before?
Being Black History Month, being the time we live in, I think that what Hazel's story can really teach us is uh, the strength of, drawing strength from within, what that takes to kind of to fuel one's virtuosity, view their artistry, but also kind of use that to fuel your convictions. That you get to, what Black History Month always allows us is to do is to appreciate those that came before us, obviously, those who helped build this country, who helped contribute to where Black people had gotten to now. Um, and I really would love for young people, especially, to see the connections of a Hazel Scott, to advocate for themselves, to demand that higher pay, to demand, the lines, to demand, that people know that the lines that you won't cross, to kind of support your own dignity. And so those are the things that I really want people to come away with.
What did you walk away with? Whether it be as a producer, as a person, like having done this, once it was over, what did you learn moving forward as far as whatever your next project may be? Or is there something you can take away from this that says, okay, knowing what she fought for years ago,
Mm.
and that how, hopefully that resonates now to some people in different degrees. What did you take away from this?
For me, it was like the one of the things that I mentioned before is like the support that Black women artists have for each other, to kind of pay that forward. That's one of the things that that most resonated with me. Billie Holiday quit a job so that Hazel would be the next in line to take that. Hazel ruined her Hollywood career to support the Black women that she didn't have to support, who were, bit players on the film, to support their dignity. And that's super inspiring to me. That really, really stuck with me. So that's something that I would love to be able to pay forward, and even if it's in little ways, to kind of advocate not just for myself, but to also, if where I can lift another Black woman up, or a Black person up in this industry, which is very hard, I want to do that.
I appreciate for doing this work as a film journalist. I had not heard this story, and now I know the name and how much more she's done. You read, oh, she was married to Adam Clay, but no, you see this background, and you're like, she was much more, than just being married to him. She had a whole career before that. So I appreciate you putting this together. Obviously, we'll let people know about this, and we look forward to see what your next project may be, sooner than later. But I know with a documentary, it takes time in terms of gathering research and editing and so forth. Is there anything that you left out that you wanted to add in, but time couldn't do it?
Yes, when you asked me about archival, um, it wasn't a gem of a discovery that really was so important. It was the lack of archival in this one regard. There are no copies of the show that she did. They were destroyed. They were dumped into the East River. So that that's the greatest tragedy of her life. Had there been copies of that show still existing, perhaps, she wouldn't have been as forgotten as she is today.
Hopefully, we'll know more. Maybe somebody out there has something. You
I
never
know.
know. You
Never
never know.
know.
But congrats on this. I'm sure we'll talk down the road because you'll have more projects coming up down the road, and which we'll be happy to support. Have yourself a great day.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Bye.